in the last 48 hours, the Israelis have killed 21 Palestinians by, airstrikes, shootings, you name it. So I'm going to go through the whole list of people that have been killed, how they were killed, where they were killed, and then I will get into trying to break the situation down for those of you who are kind of you're hearing about what's happening in Gaza, but really they don't tell you the truth on mainstream media or explain it enough. So I'm going to give it to you straight. I'm going to give it to you, cut and dry. So this all started, just to give you the timeline, this started at Tuesday. So what is that? It's Tuesday the 9th, right? Tuesday, 9th of May at 2 a.m. local time in Gaza. Okay, so the Israelis conducted an airstrike. They bombed Gaza. They bombed a residential area by air, and they killed 13 people. Most of them were civilians. 9 out of the 13 were civilians, right? So much for the world's most moral army. So that's women, that's children, and this was all in the name of killing 3 leaders of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, or just for short, I'll say from now on PIJ, which is a Palestinian resistance group. They targeted these guys in their sleep, in their homes. 13 people killed, among them the 3 leaders, and then the rest are all civilians. You can see here, this is from Al Jazeera. 20 other people were injured in the pre-dawn strikes, in which more than 40 Israeli warplanes carried out attacks for nearly 2 hours starting at 2 a.m. Tuesday. Explosions targeting residential apartments were heard in different parts of Gaza. Most of the civilian victims were family members of the PIJ commanders. Civilians around the apartments were also targeted. Okay, so the 3 PIJ commanders, you can see their names here highlighted in blue on the screen. They were killed with their wives and their children. The Israeli army, which codenamed the attack Operation Shield and Arrow, said that they were responsible for recent rockets fired toward Israel. That's the Israelis' point of view, right? Here's a video of the airstrike. I'll just repeat it there a second time. So we come to the second incident where Palestinians are killed. It's on the same day, but this time it's 2 Palestinians who were killed while they were in their car, also by Israeli airstrikes. You know what? I can't go into the first attack before showing you the victims of this first one, because I wanted to do them chronologically, and I'm going to do it like that. It's quite heartbreaking, So let me just rewind a second to this very, very first incident, aggression by the Israelis, 2 a.m. Tuesday, 9th May. Here's one of the boys that was killed by the Israelis. Does this guy look like a terrorist to you? Is he a terrorist? If you're calling yourself the most moral army in the world, you kill 9 civilians, 10 civilians just to get 3 guys in their sleep? What was so urgent that you have to go and bomb their apartments while their families are there at 2 a.m. in the morning? What are they doing at 2 a.m. in the morning? That is so urgent you have to kill their families and murder their families. And this is even if you accept the Israelis' argument that, oh, they're terrorists and this and that, right? Everybody who resists Israel is a terrorist, right? Here's another Palestinian boy who was killed by the Israelis. So he experienced such a massive panic attack that his heart literally could not bear the situation, and he died. Tamim Dawood. He died of heart failure because of the Israeli airstrikes bombing his house at night. Does he look like a terrorist? He's also a terrorist. Here you can see the photo of Ali and Mayar Izz al-Din. These are among the other children that were killed. Apparently, they're also terrorists. The Israelis also killed a dentist during this airstrike, and you can see the child of the dentist who is so young. She doesn't even grasp that her father's been killed. She doesn't even know what's going on. She's obviously in a state of panic and distress because of the Israeli airstrikes. I mean, just look at this.
لا تخافيش يا عم هيو جاي تخافيش يا عم تخافيش بخير خافيش لو سمحت يلا تخافيش يا عم تخافيش لا تخافيش يا عم هيو جاي تخافيش يا عم تخافيش
So both her mother and father were killed by the Israelis. This is her father, dentist. All right, so you can see here someone from Gaza. Her name is Rasha. She said, I cried when I read the news of the killing of Dr. Jamal Khaswan, who is the family dentist. I've known him since I was a child. He was kind, polite, and known for his charity and community work. Once again, I say with sarcasm, was he, not with sarcasm, but, is this guy a terrorist? Does he look like a terrorist? Of course not. The answer to all these questions is no, obviously not. These are not terrorists. They are victims of Israeli aggression, of Israeli airstrikes that couldn't wait, right? They just had to go and kill all these people at 2 a.m. in the morning. It had to be done. Oh, so sorry. I wish they would even say sorry. They don't even acknowledge these people. I've just shown you a couple of victims in the span of 2 minutes. The Israelis won't even do that. They won't even give them that basic minimum dignity of, after murdering them and their families, to show their names at least, since they are, after all, the most moral army in the world. So now we get to the second attack in this timeline. So now we're still on the same day, this Tuesday, 9th of May, 2023. But now it's another 2 Palestinians that are killed in their car by an Israeli airstrike. This is reported also by Al Jazeera. This was in the southern Gaza Strip. And so following the car attack, the Israeli military said on Twitter that an aircraft struck a terrorist squad carrying anti-tank guided missiles in the city of Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. Note how it says anti-tank. Gee, I wonder for which tanks these missiles were destined. All right, perhaps the invading tanks. No. Here you can see we come to the next incident. You had 2 Palestinians who were killed. It's easy to get mixed up in all this. It's my job to report this, and I'm getting mixed up. There's 21 people killed in the span of a day. It's confusing. So now I'm on attack number 3. The Israelis killed 2 Palestinians, but not in Gaza this time, because remember, Gaza is its own enclave. It's on the Mediterranean Sea. It's under siege by Israel and Egypt. Now I'm talking to you about the West Bank, which is further in near Jordan. So the third attack is in the West Bank. The Israelis killed 2 Palestinians there, shooting them. So not by airstrike, they were shot. Here, this is the source from Wafa, the Palestinian news agency. So 2 Palestinians killed in an Israeli army assault near Jenin. Remember, Jenin has a famous refugee camp. It's if you watch Sky News, my condolences if you do, they will call it a hotbed of hotspot of terrorism and militiamen and all this stuff. Well, when you have people in their own country who are turned into refugees in their own country, it tends to make them angry. I don't know. It's just a thought. But in any case, the Israelis often come in and they raid Jenin, they raid Nablus. These are 2 cities in the West Bank, and they go in and kill people. And they kill often young men who are resisting Israeli occupation of their land. Remember, the West Bank, Jerusalem, these are internationally recognized as illegally occupied by Israel. So these boys, they were killed. That's the third attack. And then now we go to the fourth attack. You have more airstrikes on Gaza, 5 Palestinians killed by airstrike. So here, actually, Al Jazeera now have updated it to 6 Palestinians. So it's 6 Palestinians killed in Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip, and this is today on the 10th of May. You can see it was updated 13 minutes ago, right? So you see May 9th, May 10th, Israeli attacks, and just to get into the response, there was no response from the Palestinians yesterday on May 9th. And this left the Israelis kind of shaken and shaking, right? So they weren't quite sure what to expect, because usually what happens is the Israelis will conduct an airstrike in Gaza, and then immediately you'll have a volley of rocket fire lobbed back at them from Gaza, right? So there was no volley. There were no rockets yesterday. But they did fire rockets a few hours ago. So, right now, as I'm speaking to you, there are still rockets going in from Gaza to Israel in response to these airstrikes and killings. The thing is that because there was no response, and as I said, the Israelis were kind of, they had no plan for this. They had no clue what to do because it was unexpected. They ended up evacuating a whole bunch of Israeli settlers, right? So I saw a clip of the Israeli transport minister, ironically, who was being transported to safety. And it was just a normal clip. She was just running down a flight of stairs somewhere. Now, usually, in Tel Aviv, which is the closest to Gaza, you'll have the Israelis go and hide in their bunkers, right? They have the luxury of bunkers when there are any form of strikes. The Palestinians don't. The thing is, this is not what happened. They made, there was an official evacuation by the Israeli forces of Israeli civilians, and they've created a buffer which is around 40 kilometers away from Gaza. So this is the buffer zone. Anything within 40 kilometers of Gaza. You have people who went, and started leaving on their own dime by themselves, but the Israelis were also evacuating people, themselves. The Israelis bombing Gaza a few hours ago. This is what I was just talking about now, the latest attack. There's a clip of it. And now I'll show you the rockets coming back from Gaza towards Israel in response. He's saying they've hit Tel Aviv. You can hear the air raid sirens. So these are the rockets being fired. Give or take 100 rockets, right? Now the thing is, whether intentional or otherwise, at the end of the day, the tally, which I hate to use this word as if it's some kind of game, but the figures, in the end, you have 0 Israelis injured, 0 Israelis killed, and of course on the Palestinian side, as usual, they have the bulk, if not all, of injuries and deaths. You've got, as I said, 21 Palestinians killed as of now, and 64 Palestinians wounded in the span of 48 hours, which is, an absolute, it's an absolute massacre. And here you have Netanyahu coming out and giving a speech. I'll play this short clip. He was with his defense minister, right? Here's just a short clip.
היום לפנות בוקר ביצעה מדינת ישראל פעולה נחושה, תקיפה ומוצדקת. אנחנו בעיצומה של מערכה. בימים הקרובים כולנו נידרש לאורך רוח ויכולת עמידה. לפני שבוע כשקיבלנו את ההחלטה ליזום את מבצע מגן וחץ, הנחיתי יחד עם שר הביטחון את צה"ל וגם את מערכת הביטחון להיערך לכל תרחיש של הסלמה, וייתכן שביותר מזירה אחת. הערב אני אומר לאויבינו, כל הסלמה מצדכם תענה בתגובה מוחצת מצדנו.
It's quite ironic because he says response, but who's the one who started the aggression? It's very, it's very clear and obvious it's the Israelis. Also, when I said, when we're talking about evacuation, I mean, Tel Aviv is the closest, or shall we say the most, the largest city to Gaza. So the fact that they're able to reach that far, this is, progress or advancement that you've seen across several years now. Because a few years ago, Hamas or PIJ or whoever's firing from Gaza, it's usually Hamas, they weren't able to reach that far. But in recent years, they can definitely reach that far. They've become more and more advanced and capable in their military ordinances and executions. And so, I want to say one thing, because I started my timeline here, or the timeline about these attacks with the Israeli airstrike yesterday at 2 a.m. on May 9th. And that's a bit unfair. You know why? It's a bit unfair to the Palestinians because the real timeline actually started last week. Why do I say last week? Because in the news, what you're hearing now is that Israel killed 3 PIJ commanders along with their families, which they don't tell you. And that is true. But they actually killed a 4th member of PIJ, of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, last week. They killed Khadr Adnan, who I told you about, who, it's really quite eerie because I posted a long thread on Twitter about him, who he is, why he's on hunger strike. And then he died the next day. He passed away the next day. And the Israelis killed him, because this is the 6th time, number 6, the 6th time that he went on hunger strike. You know, you'll be hard pressed to find people that have done it once, never mind 6 times. So he's been in and out of Israeli prisons. You know, they've kept him in total 8 years in and out of Israeli prisons. He's never been tried. He's never been presented with charges, with formal charges. He's never been convicted of anything or sentenced to anything. This is, of course, under Israeli administrative detention. It's actually a British law that the Israelis continue to apply, a British colonial law. And I've done many videos on it. So you'll find a link up there or down in the description to me explaining his case and his administrative detention. My point here is that he was a PIJ member, and the Israelis killed him by not charging him with anything, not telling him what those charges were, and leaving him to starve to death in prison. And there was no response. There was no response. There were no rockets fired. There was no response, a military response from a PIJ or Hamas. So they lost one PIJ member, and they bit their tongues. And then the Israelis kill another 3 PIJ members last night, along with their families. So the bulk of the casualties are all civilians. And then finally, a few hours ago, on the 2nd day, you have a response from a PIJ from Hamas. So just keep that and bear that in mind when we talk about who is the one escalating things, who is the aggressor. Because the Israelis, they hit PIJ with 2 punches. They killed 4 of their members, 1 and then another 3 before PIJ even responded. So keep that in mind, because the mainstream media, they make you think like, oh, well, there's a bunch of terrorists running around, and the Israelis, you know, the civilized Israelis that we fund, that we protect, that we give shelter to and allow them to commit all sorts of human rights abuses. They are the anti-terrorists. They are the ones doing counterterrorism. When it's actually the complete opposite. You know, we are supporting Israeli terrorism, Israeli occupation, and the Palestinians are even, you know, they're being kicked while they're down. And only after killing Khadr Adnan and the 3 other PIJ members was there finally a response. And, you know, the Israelis have been trying to fracture PIJ for quite a while. You didn't really hear about PIJ in the last couple of years. It was more focused on Hamas when it comes to Gaza. But actually, in the last year or so, especially in the last year or so, you know, you've seen Zayad Nakhaleh doing visits in Lebanon, in Iraq. He's the head of PIJ, you know, and the fact that PIJ is based in Damascus, in the capital of Syria, next door, also gives you an idea of how this is a unified response, a unified front. And you had Hamas and PIJ both issue a written statement, a formal statement, yesterday after the 3 PIJ members were killed, and doing it in a unified manner, in a unified fashion, which is very important to understand, because, you know, before the status quo was that you had Fatah in the West Bank, governing the West Bank. You had Hamas governing Gaza. And remember, these are 2, you know, parts of Palestine that have been cut and isolated. And, you know, you have PIJ in both, but mostly, based in Damascus and then doing other things elsewhere. But now it's not the case anymore. Now, when we talk about the resistance or the axis of resistance, think of it as one block, because it truly is. It is in that, you know, it's one block militarily, politically, and in every manner and domain that you can think of. It is one unified block. So actually, the Israelis, by behaving like this, they've achieved the complete opposite. Instead of fracturing the Palestinian resistance or resistance to the Israeli occupation in Syria, they have done the opposite. They have brought all of these groups together that definitely, you know, they have common causes, but had difficulty in other periods of history working with each other or coming together. Now they have come together. Now they are one unified front. And you know, regardless of PIJ or regardless of the resistance axis, just think of this, you know, in terms of casualties. How do you kill 3 people and then murder their families and their children? I mean, these are kids, man. They don't even understand the word terrorism. Do you think this kid here, understands what terrorism means? How do you murder someone and then you know, just wash your hands or not even mention, you know, wash your hands of it and not even mention it? This dentist, is he a terrorist as well? You know, or his kid who was crying in the ambulance here? These kids. these people were murdered. They didn't even get a chance at life. They haven't even, their brains don't even function the way our brains function. They don't even grasp politics or this world. How do you go and murder them? If those kids were Ukrainian, if those kids were Israelis, I bet you their faces would be front page news. They'd be plastered on the front page news. So why don't we give the same respect to them? Why don't we give them the same kind of, grievance and mourning and respect that they deserve? Why are they robbed of life and then robbed of dignity on top of it? This is disgusting behavior, and Israel cannot go around murdering these kids and then saying that they're doing counterterrorism. They are the real terrorists when you do stuff like this. If we do it by the book, we look at the Geneva Convention or the UN Charter or what every international treaty and military convention says. It's really the Palestinians who have the legal, not just moral, the legal right enshrined in international law to take up arms against the Israelis in any way they see fit, whether they want to fire a nuclear missile or a rock. I mean, hopefully there will be no nukes involved, but because that will be the demise of us all. But my point is here that they can do whatever they see fit to kick the Israelis out of their land, period. And the Israelis, I think right now they're quite afraid. I think they're quite afraid because they've never experienced this where they strike once with Khadr Adnan and then the three, and then there's no response, there's no immediate response. They thought that the Palestinians are planning something big, that there will be a big response, and that's why they evacuated everyone, within a 40-kilometer radius. They created this buffer zone. As those groups said themselves, they reserve the right to respond at any time, in any fashion. And resistance, when you are resisting illegal occupation of your country, it's always legal and moral and just. So don't let the mainstream media lie to you, trick you, or try to poison your mind in that regard. We see very clearly in regards to Russia and Ukraine. Let's see clearly here when it comes to the Palestinians and their right to armed struggle and resistance.